Hello, everyone. This is James with Let Go Printing, broadcasting from downtown Los Angeles in my studio at Pico and Maple. This is my first YouTube video, so please bear with me. I just got this software installed, and today we're going to go through the preliminary steps of pulling apart this blindfolded Cupid image for the purposes of screen printing it in 6 colors on canvas to be sewn up into tote bags. This is an actual job, and we quoted it for 6 colors. One of the first things I do when tackling one of these projects is I take a look at the file and make sure it's adequate for working on in a digital capacity. So I'm looking at this one in Photoshop, and it's about 9 inches wide, give or take, and 10, 11 inches tall. That's plenty of real estate to make a great print. And I'm going to quickly check the image size here, and it looks to be 300 pixels per inch. There's plenty of information here to work with, which is awesome. So I'm going to assume for the purposes of this video that you have some kind of knowledge of how to work with Photoshop. I'm not going to get too bogged down in some of the computational stuff. I want to explain more of the conceptual aspects of why you pull it apart into this many colors. And, I'll definitely share some techniques for how I do that. So let's get started. I think I learned this from Scott Fresner. One of the things that he does first is he goes to filter, sharpen, and unsharp mask. And that just gives it a little more contrast between the pixels. I think it's a good thing to do, maybe somewhere between 1 and 2 pixels, 50%. That's fine. And 6 colors. So one of the things I do first before I start pulling apart the colors is I hands off the mouse, hands off the keyboard. Let's just take a look at the image and see what we have here. And just take a look at it, evaluate it. See what's going to be easy, what's going to be problematic. And one of the things I see right away that's great is that the customer did us a solid and the image is on a transparent background, which is great. So we don't have to make any masks around the whole thing and pull it apart from the background. That's great. So I see red, I see yellow in the hair, I see blue in the wings. I also see a blue on the ground that Cupid is standing on. Of course, this is a little bit warmer blue than the blue in his wings, but we've already notified the client and set the expectations that these blues are different, but we're going to be using the same ink for them. Now, it'll be a bonus if we can use, maybe one of the reds or maybe the pink to shift the blue that Cupid is standing on to be a little bit warmer in the actual print. But those colors are close enough together that we can use one plate to capture all of that. We're going to need a black. That's going to be our 4th color, or some kind of dark charcoal to get the deep etching lines in his armpit, on the underside of his arm, in the bottom of his hair, and the arrow and the bow. And I know this from experience that we're also going to need either a second black that's very light or some kind of gray to capture the details in the wings there. And we can even take our eyedropper and move it over those thin etched lines, and nowhere do I see that is actually black. So if we were to print that with black ink, the whole image is gonna be blown out and so dark and you're not going to be able to let up on the squeegee, ease up on the squeegee to get it to be lighter, especially when you're printing on canvas. So we will be using a gray, and that's tricky to separate out. The other thing that we will be using is a pink. And maybe some people will say, James, you just need to grow a pair and use a light percentage of the red in Cupid's cheek here to get the red to print, to get the pink in the cheek to come out. And that's going to be like a 10, maybe 15% dot, if that. And it'd be even better if we had like a highlight white to come back just to control that pink. But here's the thing, printing on canvas is like this. It's very topographical. Sometimes the dots don't hit in the grooves of the canvas, and you get a bit of a mottled, blotchy, sketchy print. That's not going to be great for the cheek, for getting that pink there. It's a pretty risky thing to do, to use a percentage of red to capture the pink in Cupid's cheek. Furthermore, people look at faces. That's where your eye is going to be drawn to right away in this image. When you're looking at a piece of artwork and there's eyes, you always look at the eyes first. You always look at the head first. Your eye's not drawn to Cupid's toes. I mean, hell, he could have 3 toes, and probably 9 out of 10 people wouldn't even notice that if you asked them, what's wrong with this image? You know? But if the cheeks are red, that's just going to look a little weird. And it might be a little distracting. So we're going to use a pink, but the added benefit of using a pink is that we will be able to capture some of the variation of tone in the legs of Cupid. I mean, we can see a line right here. And this is why I like to just take a moment and look at the image before I even start playing around with colors and get bogged down with any of that. So 6 colors, y'all. This is great because, like I said, it's on a transparent background. So the first thing I'm going to do, click on the layer and go to channels, make myself an alpha channel showing that mask. And I'm going to label that main mask, just in case. Maybe they want to print it on a black background later, and I'm going to need the mask to choke to make an underbase. Who knows? And then I'm going to put a layer under that. I'm going to fill it with white. Excuse me. Let's deselect that. Let's fill the whole thing. And let's merge that down, flatten that image. And I'm going to hit Command J or Control J and make a few more layers of that. I'm also going to make a new layer, and I'm going to fill that with 128, 128, 128 RGB gray. Why am I doing that? Because I am going to make a saturation mask. And this is the first thing that I do when I start tackling these, or after I evaluate the image, is I make my main channels. And one of those channels that I found over the years to be extremely helpful is a saturation mask. It really helps, folks. It really helps. And I'm going to go through this very quickly. Maybe in some future video I'll slow it down so that you can see how the saturation mask is made. But here we go. I'm going to change the blending mode to color. That looks weird. And I'm going to merge these 2 layers together. There we go. Gotta stick those keys. And I'm going to change that to difference. And now you'll see why I filled the background with gray, because the difference between 128 and 128 is 0. And I'm going to merge those layers together. And now I have this. Let's zoom out just a little bit. This is the beginning of my saturation mask. And I'm going to hit Control U or Command U for the hue and saturation dialog box and bring that saturation all the way down, and then hit Control L and mess with the levels, even out that histogram a little bit, so I have a broad range of tone to play with. Boom! That's my saturation mask. And this is the cool thing about the saturation mask, is that instead of, grabbing the magenta plate and masking that red part out, like, I have a really good mask of that right here. And it's also going to capture the yellow in the hair, and it's going to help me capture the blue in the wings and a little bit of the blue in the bottom there. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a luminosity mask. And a luminosity mask is basically the grayscale image, and I'm going to screen the saturation so that the darkest parts of the image from the red and the sash are not present in that mask. So let's turn the blending mode in this one to luminosity. And you can see that this is basically grayscale, but the red in the sash is very dark. So I don't want to use that as my black plate, because it's just going to print black on top of the red. That's no good. So we'll use our saturation mask here to screen that, and look at that. Now here's the more or less grayscale image, and here's it with the saturation turned off. And so this is going to give us like a good representation of where the black values are, and not the darkness that's made dark by the saturation. I hope that makes sense. Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, so I'm going to take the saturation mask, select all. I'm going to, did that select all? There we go. Copy that, make a new channel, and we're going to paste that there. And I'm going to call that my saturation mask. Okay. Next, I'm going to take this luminosity, and again, I'm going to screen the, oops, excuse me, messed that up. It should be luminosity, and this is screen. So again, this is our saturation mask. This is going to be our luminosity mask, and I am going to merge all three of those, select all, copy that, and make a luminosity mask. I'm going to paste that in there. Oops, I messed that one up. Let's go back here, copy, paste. There we go. So I have the saturation mask, my luminosity, it's more of a plate than a mask, and I have a main mask. Now, the other thing I like to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer into another file, and I'm going to go to image mode, grayscale, just so I have the grayscale. I'm going to copy that and bring that into my channels, because sometimes the grayscale mask is, or a grayscale channel, grayscale plate is very helpful, especially when creating a gray plate. I'm going to go back to my dummy file here, and again, just to get everything started, I like doing this rote operation here where I make my grayscale, luminosity, saturation, and my CMYK channels, because sometimes it's easier to pull information from the CMYK channels. So I'm going to copy, duplicate that channel over to my Cupid master file. I'm going to duplicate the magenta over to my Cupid master file. I'm going to right click and duplicate my yellow over to Cupid master, and duplicate the black over to Cupid master. Okay, and we'll check and make sure that I have all those channels. Fantastic. I'm gonna make one more channel, and I'm gonna call that the ground, and I am going to make that a spot color, double clicking on the channel. I'm going to turn that into approximately the color of canvas, natural canvas. Listen to that accent. And we'll just make it 100% solid. I'm going to make, and now I am going to save as this file. And here's a really important thing to do, folks, is to make sure that your checked boxes, spot colors and alpha channels and layers are all checked. And if you don't make that one spot channel, this won't be checked, and you'll be saving your file, working away, making a great looking SEP, and then you go to save it, you close Photoshop, you open it back up, and you have none of your spot channels because you didn't save as with your spot colors. I made that mistake once and lost 8 hours of work. Not okay. Anyway, so I'm going to save as, I'm going to replace that, blah, blah, blah. I don't need this file anymore. Okay, so let the fun begin. I kind of like this black channel. I think it's good because there's not a lot of information, but there's not too little. So we can start with that. And this is the thing is, like, you don't need to use the color range selector, which is sort of, it's not always the most effective way to go about this. Often pulling channels using the RGB channels and the CMYK channels and your saturation channel can provide you most of the information that you need. And I would say overall, my technique for doing this is get information and subtract and subtract and subtract from it until you have just the right amount of information. Rather than trying to build a plate, it's way easier to subtract information than it is to add information. I hope that makes sense. I'll try and touch on that as we go through here so that makes more sense. Anyway, we're going to call this the black channel, the black plate. And automatically the mask is, red. It's probably a vestige from doing Photoshop IRL back in the day where maybe they used masks out of red. I don't know. But I'm going to call this a spot color. And I'm going to turn it black. When your channel is black, the solidity doesn't matter. There's no white in black. And so it doesn't matter if your solidity is 0 or if it's 100. So we can just leave it at 50. And now we have our black channel. Wow. Already we're looking great. So Control 2 is going to give us our RGB channels again, and I am going to get rid of this layer. And let's start with the red here. That looks pretty straightforward. And I'm going to use the saturation mask. I'm going to duplicate that channel and make a spot color. And I'm going to go to color libraries. And I'm going to start picking Pantone colors. Printers like to use Pantone colors. So the closer you can dial that color in from the beginning, the better off you are. With Photoshop, you can just start typing the number. You have to type fast. And I'm going to guess this is about 45 red. And we'll use that. Red doesn't have a lot of white in it, so I'm going to say the solidity is about 10. That's about the opacity of the ink when it's printed on canvas, let's say. Maybe I'll make another video about that later, but let's start with that. And if I turn on these channels, oh Jesus, that's no good. So I am going to invert that channel, and that actually looks pretty good. I have all of the information that I need in here. If I had anything to say about this, maybe I could subtract the cyan channel. And let's do that. So I'm going to go up to image and apply image. And this is my source. This is my layer channel. I'm going to use the cyan, and I don't want to multiply. I want to screen the cyan. I want to take whatever information is from cyan and subtract that from the red plate. And you can preview that. See how the red, I get a lot of 10%, 15% dots in there. I'm going to get rid of some of that information. And that'll just make our previewing a little bit better. Okay, that's not bad. You know, we can get rid of some of that information later. For the hair, I mean, it's yellow. It's pretty damn yellow. I can either use the saturation mask or I could use the yellow mask. And you know what? I'm going to use the saturation mask. I'm going to duplicate that. And again, invert it, Control I or Command I on a Macintosh. Now, I don't have a lot of information here. And one of the windows I like to keep open all the time is my info box. And that's going to tell me, like, if I'm looking up here with the eyedropper, I'm not even clicking on it. That's 42%. 42% dot, it will print as a 65% dot, maybe. But I want that to print solid. Maybe I don't have enough information here. Let's take a look at the yellow plate. I think we can use this, though. We'll just leave it at that, and let's take a look at the magenta plate. There's not a lot of information in the hair here. You know, 20%, 27%, but let's, oops, I don't want the calculations quite yet. Apply image. I'm gonna subtract the magenta from the yellow. And look, we just got rid of all of that. And that's pretty clear. We can bump up the levels and even that tone curve out a little later. But right now I'm just making some big chops, just as a sculptor would, you know, take some huge chunks out of the marble to, you know, get my head out of here. And let's find a Pantone color for that yellow. I'm gonna take the eyedropper. I'm gonna guess 604. What does it tell me here? 617. That looks good. Might be a little hot, but that looks a little light. Let's go with 617. And again, we're going to use a spot color. That ink probably has a lot of white in it. Excuse me. 617. Solidity, I'll just leave it at 50%. We're not doing a lot of color blending with this one, you know, where we're creating oranges with reds and yellows, and I really need to dial in like the opacity of the ink. Like we're not doing a lot of color blending per se. We're just pulling the colors out in this one, and that's the challenge here. So let's look at our image. We got the black with the red and the yellow. A lot of stuff is overlapping. I'm gonna bring the black down here. That's going to print last. You know, so we're getting there. There's not a lot that we're doing right now. I might even subtract the yellow from there. Now there's too much yellow. There's too much yellow in the hair in the yellow plate to subtract the yellow plate from the red plate here. But let's start with let's use the cyan plate as the basis for our blue. And again, let's pick a blue. I like this blue. That's a nice blue. That's probably gonna look something like that. It looks a little green in the color picker there. You know, that looks a little saturated. Maybe that's it. Might be a little bit lighter. Let's try that. Let's see what this is. 7709. That looks to be like a pretty good match. So let's set the spot color for the blue, 7709. Okay, that's gonna have a lot of white in it. I'm just gonna leave the opacity at 50% right now. I'm not gonna worry about it. And this one, so if this is our cyan plate, and let's turn it on, that's just printing blue everywhere. We need to get rid of a few things in there. And one of the things I'm gonna take out first is the black. So again, apply image. I'm going to use our black plate, and I'm going to screen that, and I'm going to toggle the preview so you can see that, you know, we're getting rid of all the black, because I don't need to overprint everything. The key to making a nice, elegant separation, simulated process separation, is to have the plates fit together almost like a puzzle piece. And then you control the amount of ink going down. And then you can print wet on wet. And you don't have to flash. Maybe we'll use one flash during production for this, so that the printers can just whip this thing out. It's our job as separators, as pre-press technicians, to make the job of the printer as easy as possible. You don't want to be a printer and struggling on the press with shitty art. It's unprofessional, you know. You want to be doing these guys a solid. They have a demanding job to do. So I'm going to subtract the black plate. We're getting somewhere here. We still have way too much information in here. You know, this part in the leg here, that doesn't need to be printing as blue. There should be no blue in this sash right here. I might even be able to start with the saturation mask. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go back. I'm going to use the saturation mask. I'm going to select that. Or, actually, I have an idea. Let's do this. Let's use 7709 cyan plate, and let's go to, oops, not image size. Apply image. There we go. And I am going to screen. Let's see what that looks like. Ooh, okay. Now we're getting rid of all the excess crap there. That might be a little too harsh of an operation. Let's see what the lightning does. And this is cool to use all the different blending modes, you know, to subtract the yellow from the magenta plate, to multiply them, to divide the plates, to burn one plate against each other. You know, there's all sorts of blending tools that you can use in the apply image feature in Photoshop. The lighten feature, that looks pretty good. We can always redo the plate later. And we see here in our info box that, you know, we're getting rid of a lot of information there. Screening, I don't really like that because we're losing a lot of the blue in here. Excuse me. So lighten, I might even dial down the opacity a little bit just to get rid of some of that extra stuff. The extra information, like I'm saying, in the thighs of Cupid, like that doesn't need to be blue. Let's try this. Let's try that. We can delete more information later. What was the other one that I said? Saturation mask. I think we can, honestly, we might be able to use that for the pink, but I'm going to see what the magenta, ooh, I like that. Because then we have a clear spot on the cheek there. And this percentage here in the leg, 18%, 22, 15, 22%, you know, versus, you know, 11, 12, 15% up in the shoulder here. So there's more information in the feet here. And we can even see a line right here where that pink is overlaying on the foot and the right leg of Cupid. So I'm actually going to start with the magenta layer here, the magenta plate. And the analogous plate here is sometimes the green channel, but I like the contrast in the foot here. That's going to be easier to work with. The more contrast, the easier it will be to work with. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to duplicate that channel. And we're just going to leave that one as is for right now. Though let's pick a pink. Nailed it. Boom. 709. 7606. Close enough. Good enough for jazz, as they say. Turn that into a spot color. So 7606. Leave it at 50%. And let's just see what our print looks like. Oh gosh, that is ugly. That's terrible. Who's doing this? But again, we're capturing the information. We can always subtract from the information in each of the channels, but we can't add back to it. So I also said that we're going to need a gray. This is one of the trickiest channels to make. And I'm going to show you maybe 2 different techniques for how to do this. And I might even need a new black plate because I'm also looking at like showing the form of the solar plexus in Cupid. I kind of want that to print as black. Let's see if we can capture that. Sometimes that's in the luminosity mask, but I mean, if we were to use this as the black plate, like, that's not going to work. The whole image is just going to get smashed with the squeegee. These prints, when we're printing on canvas, you need a lot of pressure on that squeegee. This is going to be printed on an automatic press. You're going to put a lot of pressure on it. You can really dial in that pressure, which is awesome. But like, if this was our black plate, it would. Let's see what it would look like. I'm going to level it, and you're going to have a dot gain curve like this, and this is what your image is going to look like. It's just going to get blown out. Always go light on the black. You can always lean on the black, but you can't lighten up on the squeegee. So I like that. It has all the information that we need, but there's also a lot of noise here. So we could take the luminosity mask. Let's duplicate it, because the nice thing about the luminosity mask is that it doesn't have any information in the sash here. So we're just getting the light and dark without the colors. I hope that makes sense. And let's take the levels to it. Let's just see what we can do, because sometimes you might be able to get like a good looking plate. That's not bad. But again, it's gonna print really, really heavily. So let's try something else. And I've used this before with etchings, reproducing etchings. And I found that it's really helpful to use a black, maybe a transparent black or a gray, to capture the details, the faint details. So let's try using the luminosity mask. I'm going to undo what we just did there, and I'm going to go with filter, and let's see, where is it? Stylize, other, high pass filter. This is cool. Wicked, man. This is showing us like all of where just the etching is. We're getting like a little bit of it. Let's try that. I like that. And remember when we were making the saturation mask, that when we used difference as the blending mode, the two grays kind of cancel each other out. Let's see what that does if we make a new mask and we capture this gray right here. Actually, let's just see if we can level this one out. Okay, so let's pick our white point. Let's say that's our white. Nice. And wow, look at that. Look how delicate those lines are. This is what we want that black plate to be looking like. That's nice. It's still gonna print kind of heavy, but we could use the black plate here. We could print the gray as is, sort of like this, and then actually kind of underbase the black. So again, the canvas like this, and you're printing solid ink on top of it, then you can be delicate with the squeegee and overprint another color. So let's try using that as the gray. And I'm just gonna assign 421, 422. It's a pretty standard gray. And let's see what that looks like. It's nice. It's subtle. And then when we put the black on top of it, look at that. We've captured all of that detail. It's pretty cool, huh? Still, I'm not super thrilled about, the toning in here. And one way we can get rid of that is we can apply image. And let's get rid of all the color. And let's use our saturation mask, and we'll screen. Boom. Everywhere there was color, we just got rid of. I love this. This is excellent right now. We have our blue. Oops, that's pink. excuse me, our blue, our yellow, and our red. And this is usually where I would take a few minutes to take a break, let your eyes rest, because you shouldn't be staring at a screen all day. And this, save this. And this is a good foundation. Using these 6 plates right here, we can continue to chip away at the sculpture that we're making and create plates that are only printing the color where they need to go. So at that, I'm going to sign off, and there will be a part 2 where we fine tune all of this. But I wanted you all to see how we get to this, where we have our base plates, not to be confused with underbase, but plates that have all the information that we need, and then we can chip away at them, subtract from the plates, so that we can get that perfect spot color separation. So stay tuned for episode 2. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel. Give me a like. Ask me a question. Happy to answer any questions. I didn't want to say this at the beginning of the episode and bore everyone to tears, but now that you've reached the end, I just want to say thank you to what is this new software here? OBS. And thank you to Adam and Pat and Ricardo for teaching me all of this stuff. I've been a leech on the internet for far too long, and it's about time I start giving back. So please ask me anything if you have any questions. Happy to answer this, because there's also the ulterior motive here of we need more printers who know how to do this kind of stuff by hand, because otherwise DTG will eclipse the fine art of screen printing, and I've yet to see a DTG that looks better than a screen print. So let's keep it alive, guys. Let's keep it alive. All right. Ciao.